Right, guys, welcome back to the Ep.38 Fitness podcast. Today, I have a very, very special guest on the podcast. I have another other than Pete Rubish. If you guys are familiar with powerlifting, he's kind of like the Brett Favre of powerlifting. One of the OG guys, along with Dan Green, Kelly Branson, um, Stacy Burr, like one of the first people to really make raw powerlifting, I think, popular. Um, and just super blessed to have him on. So, Pete, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Just we had like a mock meet type thing in our gym with the University of Tennessee powerlifting team. So it's been a busy day, but that's the lifestyle right now. I'm always staying busy with training people and online coaching, all that kind of stuff. So keeps me really busy.
Let's go into that then. So are you actually coaching the University of Tennessee powerlifting team?
No, so we just kind of have an affiliation with them where they show up, on occasion, and they were doing like their first kind of mock meet today that they've ever put on. But I just coach all sorts of guys all over. Been doing that for about 10 years now. So do that, personal training clients. We do group classes at our gym because I own a small gym with my wife, and it's always busy getting here at 5 a.m. on weekdays and staying till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. So
Yeah. So you're basically full time right now. You're a gym owner and training people.
yeah, it's very time consuming, and then having like a 9-month old, but
Yeah.
I still get my lifting in, 4 or 5 days a week. Still love that. Just I'm not spending like 3 hour sessions in the gym like I used to. Now it's like, hour and a half type, much
Mhm.
quicker sessions, which you just have to be as efficient as possible with that kind of schedule. So
For sure. So, in regards to like, owning a gym, what kind of motivated you to sort of start your own one?
well, it's kind of crazy because to be honest, I never wanted to do it. Like it was kind of my wife's thing. She worked, she's worked in gyms for 15, 20 years, and she's always wanted to do it. It's always been her dream. So I kind of went along with it, and we've got a pretty good thing going here, but there's a lot that goes into it. So they're not profitable like people would think. Like there's not money to be made in a gym. You kind of keep it going, and it's like a labor of love, but the actual income from it is pretty much nil. So you really have to like it. You really have to enjoy it. And there's a lot of perks about it. Like there's a community aspect. I have my guys, my powerlifting, fellow powerlifters who I train with, and we'll have certain days where we have like a squat, squat day or whatever. But it's a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, and I most of the what I'm familiar with is that most of the income from gyms is from the personal training and the clients that you have out there. Because I know that at my gym, for example, I actually talked to the owners about it, and like they made it specifically for trainers. Just to really have a good spot to train out of, and so they could actually have some sort of income from it.
Yeah, really the training and the group classes are what kind of pay the rent more or less. So your general memberships don't add a lot to it, but obviously that's a part of the gym as well. For the most part, everyone who's here is either doing like online coaching or personal training or group classes. So the majority of them are doing that, and that's kind of what funds the place. But it's a real small gym, like 3,600 square feet. Just the basics, we have a cable set up, dumbbells up to hundreds, free weights, platforms, that kind of thing, but not really any fancy machines or anything like that. So
Good news is that for powerlifting, you don't need much to get strong. So um,
no, you can kind of stick to the basics.
for sure. So kind of diving a little bit into like your athletic background before powerlifting. Did you play sports at all before you started powerlifting?
Yeah, it was in high school I was playing football, basketball, and track. I was running track, and my favorite honestly was basketball. That was the one I was best at. But come my senior year right beforehand, I dropped out everything to just continue lifting because that was really the part I enjoyed most, the weight training aspect of sports. So I was getting pretty strong, and I thought I had a knack for this. So I dropped out of all of them and solely focused on powerlifting, and that really I guess it ended up being a pretty good path. But football was enjoyable, it was tough, and track I was never really good at. So it's just that's really where it came from. I played like 1 year of football my junior year, did pretty well, but then I just wanted to lift. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I talked to a lot of people and that they're like, oh, I like playing sports, but the lifting part of it was like a lot more fun for me. Like what drew you specifically to like powerlifting though? Because you could have gone like several different routes, because with football like strength and conditioning, there's like Olympic lifts, not just like power lifts, and there's also like you also build some muscle, so there's some bodybuilding there. So like, what drew you to strength sport and in particular powerlifting?
Yeah, I think like deadlift in particular, I really enjoyed, obviously. So going heavy on that, and the whole idea with powerlifting was lifting as heavy as possible. Whereas with bodybuilding, it was always about how you looked, and I didn't really care how I looked. That was never a motivation as far as trying to get, super aesthetic or jacked or whatever. That never motivated me. It was just about putting more weight on the bar and getting gradually stronger. Um, because it's like a self-improvement thing. You can, consistently see more weight on the bar. You know you're making progress. And it's a lot more measurable than just looking in the mirror at how your physique is coming along. So, and then it wasn't as complicated as like Olympic lifting, because with Olympic lifting, you need to have platforms where you can drop the bar. You need a lot of bumper plates and things like that, and they're much more technical. So I almost like the more pure aggression focused aspect of powerlifting, which is kind of what led me that way. And having a chip on my shoulder as far as kind of being an outcast, loner type in high school, where I just really hung out by myself, did my own thing, went to school, got pretty good grades, but I'd go home and lift. I didn't party, I didn't do anything like that. So I just was drawn to this sport that kind of let me have an outlet and let me kind of get that aggression out and that pent up frustration, more or less. So
So would you say that a lot of your motivation was sort of like proving others wrong, or like what was your motivation? That like the thing that really stands out to me and a lot of people who I've talked to about you and just in general is like you can tell when somebody's very passionate about what they do, because there's just something different about how they act about that, how they think, their obsession with improving. That makes sense.
yeah, I mean, I feel like that has been a thing my whole life, where it's I do my best when I feel like I'm going to prove somebody wrong or when I have to. And it's not even necessarily anyone in particular, it's just more or less that attitude, that chip on your shoulder attitude, that mentality. And anytime I channel that, it tends to bring out the best in me, where I feel counted out. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, because we all have hardships we go through. We all have our own struggles in life, and that just tends to bring out the best in a lot of us.
Yeah, like for myself, I came into powerlifting after like being like terribly anorexic, and I was like I knew I had to like do something to like get better, and I was like, well, I want to gain weight, but I want it to be like good weight. So I just started lifting a little bit, and then I realized I was really strong, and it became like an RPG for me. It's like, oh my gosh, like I want to like level up every single day and in the gym, and kind of like you, it was like I think everybody is interested in aesthetics, but for me, it's like powerlifting is so much more fun because, like what you said, it's so really hard to judge muscle growth, especially like past the new stage. You're just like, hopefully, think something's going on. But with strength, it's like, okay, I am getting stronger, or I am not getting stronger. Especially if you're good at it, it becomes a lot of fun. Like I know that Ronnie Coleman says, like, it's just like anybody can look good, but like you don't all not everybody has a gift of strength, and you're one of those people who was freaky, like absolutely freaky.
Yeah, and I mean, I, why'd you get into powerlifting? Like, what was the main thing for you?
For me, it was literally just I thought about this a lot. I had really struggled with self-confidence, and that was what a lot of my anorexia stemmed from. And I felt like I wasn't really worthy of love. I didn't love myself. And powerlifting taught me that I am capable of really anything I set my mind to. It taught me like that there's more to life than just like trying to like be like thin or whatever. Like it gave me also like a sense of control. It was like if I control these variables, I'm going to get stronger. Like that's what it was for me, and like what keeps me going right now is just like it's like I love myself now, and that's finally like something that's powerlifting has given me. Like I tore apart like a lot of my relationships because of my eating disorder, and getting stronger and improving my mental health through that, like that just gave me like my life back in general, like completely. Like I went from like 135 to like 191 in like 6 years.
So you've been
So
lifting for about 6 years, and I know your deadlift, isn't it in the 600 range? Above that?
705, I did up 705 on Wednesday,
705. Wow.
and
When'd
I
you hit the
probably could have
705?
Wednesday. I could have hit like
Oh,
720, like 722 on that day. Like it was out of nowhere. Like I strained my lat back in uh June after I pulled 700 at my meet. I was on a hot streak, but I just was pushing too hard. And then I had the feeling there. It wasn't like all of a sudden, like out of nowhere. Like it was coming along, but like I was really stubborn. I was dehydrated. I did 573 for six on that last rep. I tore my lat. I felt it rip. Um, but yeah, like I remember, like I never. If you were to tell Adam 6 years ago, 135, hospitalized, having to be on Anavar because muscle wasting and all that issue,
oh.
like you would be you would be doing that like 6 years ago. Like it doesn't get any better than that.
So you just hit the 722 PR on Wednesday?
705.
Okay. What are your best numbers on all the lifts then?
Well, on my meet in um November, I hit 523 on squat and I got
Okay.
347 on bench and then I got 683 on deadlift. But I've gotten way stronger since then. I got 44 for 45 for four at RPE 8 on squat. I got 375 on bench and then I just pulled 705. So like it's been a pretty massive. I was really sick too before my meet, so that impacted things. But
So
um,
like when you were 6 years ago, it was anorexia,
yeah, yeah.
and they put you on, they was like prescription, they put you on Anavar and all that. And
hmm
um, how long were you dealing with that?
Man, like it was for like good 5 years.
Wow.
Like off and on, but I was actually on it until I was like actually like hospitalized and whatnot. So and then I was prescribed that and then started gaining some weight and then I was healthy enough to where the doctor's like, hey, we're going to take you off of this. So like that was like I got to like about like 150 pounds and was like eating more and um it was really like when I got into college, for example, like I was like, okay, like I can't do this anymore. In high school I could kind of get by. But like in college I was like, there's no way. Like I can't do this. Like so I kind of made the choice on my own to do that.
Were you eating like one meal a day or not even?
It was like so it would, at the peak of it, it would basically be I would wake up in the morning, my parents would weigh me. And I knew I was really, really light. And so I would literally chug like a gallon of water in the morning within the span of like 10 minutes so that I wouldn't get yelled at. And I would feel like really sick and I wouldn't want to like eat. And basically I would just be sitting down at breakfast with my family, just like picking at my food. And then my parents would get annoyed and just be like, go to school. And then I would basically skip lunch. I would be in the car with my windows rolled up like in 80-degree heat in Utah because I was cold. And then I would basically eat whatever my parents made me eat for dinner, and then I would go to bed. But then I'd have like one gigantic like 10,000 to 15,000 calorie binge fest on Saturdays. Like just was so hungry. So
Dang,
it was a
wow.
pretty toxic thing. And then I found powerlifting and hired a coach, and um, I haven't done that since. I haven't done that since. Like I'm a completely different person. So it's definitely been a big life changer for me. And that's why I'm passionate about like coaching and doing this.
So how old are you now?
25.
Okay. That's a wild story. That's crazy. And I'm just curious more for because I it's honestly Anavar was my favorite, but what was the dose they would give you?
10 milligrams. So
Okay, that's so very
it was
low.
pretty
That's very
low.
low.
Like
Yeah,
I know that most of the time, like 25 to 50 is like I think that John Hatt takes like 50 milligrams a day, like when he's on.
yeah, I mean, if I were to take steroids again, I would do 50 milligrams Anavar when I was, you could run it for upwards of 12 weeks because it's really not liver toxic. So I love the Anavar, great stuff. Really no side effects. Um,
Did you ever get like any GI issues on it, like digestion?
no, I just felt awesome. I felt strong as an ox on it. It was great, but that was again 50 milligrams. and no sides really. The only sides would show up on blood work with HDL would be
Yeah.
down a little, and that'd be about it though. I felt freaking awesome. My liver enzymes weren't even touched on it. Um, just it was by far my favorite. So
So I had a medical reason. I had a medical reason to start taking PEDs. What motivated you to sort of like, because I take it that you start off natural like everybody else did, and there was probably a point where you're like, oh crap, like maybe this is what I want to do. What was that motivation?
well, I mean, like Chris Hickson at the time, rest in peace. He was around my same age and he was blowing up. Like his numbers were ridiculous. He had 700 deadlift real fast, which is where I was at the time. And then he just blew up on his way to 800-pound deadlift. And we were around the same age, like I said. So it was like a jealousy thing where I'm like, well, shoot, I want to get on that stuff and do the same thing. Or I want to, it was a competition. And really, that's what motivated me to start is I just wanted to, I saw this guy blowing up and getting attention. And I was like, I want to do that. Because I knew I could. I knew I had the capability. So more or less seeing him because there weren't many social media people out there. And just having that peer pressure to almost then lack of patience. It was a lack of patience where it was just, probably not the right call. And I wish I had done things differently, but it was what I viewed as the quickest way to become a monster, more or less, become huge and become strong and all that. So I just dove right in at age 20 and I went hard. And that's how the last 10 years went basically. The
So
last
like, go ahead.
no, I mean, well, I came off obviously 26 months ago. So it's been over 2 years off everything, but including testosterone. But before that it was 8 years of really pushing it. 8, 9 years, something like that.
So what did you notice like changed from when you were obviously very strong naturally, like a 700 pound the deadlift natty, like especially at that time, I was like, holy crap. Like nowadays it's just like yeah,
Yeah, I know, right?
you're cool. Which is fun. But like what did you notice? And like what did you first take?
I mean, I started with testosterone, 500 milligrams a week, and D-ball, 50 milligrams a week. I started with that as well for 6 weeks with the 500 testosterone. So obviously, like nowadays, given what we know, that's like a way too heavy cycle to start off your first time. But this was 2010, guys. Like I didn't know, no one knew anything. There was just online forums, and everybody said first cycle is testosterone and D-ball. That's what every forum said. So I went with that, and it was just, it was a lot, but I blew up. Strength blew up, everything blew up. So it was fun. It was rewarding to see all the time, like see that progress, and lifts just kept blowing up. It was awesome, and put body weight on, got bigger, got stronger. Uh, One side effect though was obviously there was a lot of cystic acne. So this was stuff that just wasn't well made. It was made in like people's basements. You don't know where it was coming from. You don't know the quality, the conditions in which it was made. So my skin broke out like crazy, and that was something I still have scars from, literally because of the how bad the acne was. But I never got like gynecomastia or anything like that. So everybody gets, somewhat different side effects. And if you do it smart, I think you can avoid a lot of those. But that just is what happened to me.
Yeah, I remember in one of your videos, the side effects of taking anabolic. It's like, well, you're going to get gyno, hair loss, or acne, and that's what I've seen pretty true across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you did it better and you had like higher quality stuff, you could be okay. But this was like, compared to how it is now, this was a completely different time where it was very secretive. You just got what you could. It wasn't good quality. That's how it was. So,
Mhm. Yeah, so like in regards to like your training, like what changed when you went on versus like when you were like so like let's like walk through like what was training like be before you were on, like what changed, like what could you get away with when you were enhanced?
the training was still pretty much the same. Nothing changed as far as that's concerned. It was just I progressed so much faster. But the actual training itself, when you're that young, you're not going to get injured, really. You're going to stay healthy. So with or without PEDs, I was going to be able to handle a ton of volume. Like I was pushing crazy amounts of volume compared to nowadays. But it just the rate of progression was obviously way more rapid. I could do 1 rep maxes way more often because I knew the weights were going to go up. I could attempt crazy sets and just recover faster because I knew the weights were going to go up. So that was the big difference.
Yeah, like so something I've noticed is that like more of the enhanced community, it's like you see RPE 9 plus like a lot more often, and then able to actually like recover and adapt to that. Like John Hack is a perfect example of that. Like the guy lives at RPE 9.5 and he just will add 10 pounds a week. Whereas if you're natural, it's like I think natural, I think that regardless, like I think that still like I still like overall think that for most people, that more sub max volume of like RPE 8 or less is still better on drugs because you're gonna have a better stimulus to fatigue ratio. But like the things that you can get away with, and let's be honest, you'll be all guys that sport to lift heavy, heavy RPE 9 plus stuff. Like powerlifters are kind of wired differently. Like most people are going to be like, the bar is bending. I do not like that. Or powerlifters like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I like. Especially like on androgens, like it changes your brain chemistry to be like, you really want that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're much more aggressive and there's a lot more, I don't know, almost drive as far as that's concerned. But I agree that even if you're on PEDs, submaximal training in that 65 to 85% range is where the majority of your training should take place. That's going to be optimal. So I totally agree with that.
So, from my understanding too, most of the training, I think like, this was before daily undulating periodization was a thing, correct? Like when you were just starting, it was like mostly just like linear.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't super well known. Things, there's just been so much more information in the last 5 years, even than before that time frame. So the sport's exploded. There's a lot more knowledge as far as training and PEDs, which is why the numbers are going up so much. Um, it was like back in 2010, there just wasn't much knowledge out there. There was Chad Wesley Smith launching Juggernaut training systems. That was kind of the information that you could find. But beyond that, there was nothing.
So,
So
and I really think that's important to say because I think that gives a lot of like more merit to like what you have actually achieved, especially at that time, because we have so much information right now readily available. Like, I have these, I have free programs. Most people have free programs. There's a lot of like really good information out there. You can, if you have the time, it's going to take a long time, but if you have the time, you can learn about this stuff online. Whereas for you, it was a lot of just like, well, I'm going to do this and hopefully it works. And you got to a 900-pound deadlift like that, which is insane.
yeah, it was a lot of trial and error because my training used to not be structured at all up until the last couple of years. But everything before that was just, balls to the wall, heavy all the time, and trial and error. But so
So was it like mostly
there
like
wasn't
a lot of like
structure.
was it like a lot of singles then, or like was it just like I'm going, this feels bad today, or like I'm just going to do like top set of three instead of a single, or like a
Yeah,
like a
it was just
variation.
very intuitive training in the sense where I was like, okay, I feel on today, so I'm going to do something crazy. Whether that, crazy set was going to be, a 25 rep squat of 405, or if it was going to be a heavy single of 880 or whatever, it just depended. Like I just would go for something, I would kind of have decided going in like, okay, I'm going to deadlift today, I'm going to squat, whatever. But squat and deadlift, it would just be something crazy. And bench, I couldn't do as much of that because I wasn't obviously as strong on bench. Um, but and now I look back and I'm like, if I would have trained more sub max, like we just talked about, and held back, and if I didn't go heavy all the time, I would have made even way more progress. The training was stupid, so it was like I progressed in spite of the mistakes. But had I had a structured plan where I'm doing sub max training for weeks and staying away from high intensity ranges, I would have made even more progress, which is kind of funny to think about, but it is what it is. You live and learn.
Yeah, I think that's a really well like I have mixed feelings about that because I remember like when I was first started training, like I was adapting so fast. Like I would literally come in, I had a program where I basically would do like a 5 rep max or a 3 rep max or a 1 rep max. it would just change like week to week, and I could still like recover from it. And one thing I do think that I did actually learn from that is something I have seen really be underdeveloped. I know Mike Teixeira's also talked about this, and I've interviewed him about this too. Like I can grind through anything. Like if it feels really heavy, well, I know how to grind because I had so much practice with that. Whereas like now it's like I still have that skill. But like with a lot of my clients, I have noticed like with my DUP and more some max training style, sometimes my lifters really struggle once the weights get heavier, like past RPE E9. So like I feel like having like some sort of like exposure to that is important, but like from a long-term progress standpoint, it's definitely better to stay more submaximal. But when you're a beginner, it's like, and you're on PED, it's kind of like, there's such a wide range of what works for you. And in some certain sense, you're enjoying, like, you clearly love your training, like you love getting after it, you love going after it. And so, like, to some extent, it's just like your progress could have been better, but do you think you would have been like the same, like Pete Rubish, like the same, like intensity, or is the same guy on the platform if that wasn't how you train?
Yeah, no, I don't think so, because I think that was one of the things that obviously I was like known for, was these crazy sets and the intensity and such. And so that was probably, that was part of it. But I think my total could have been higher, but then I don't know if there would have been the same degree of like notoriety. So it's a catch 22, because it's like, yeah, I probably could have ended up with a much higher total, but there might have not have been the same um aura around those days. So it's a really good point right there. With it might not have made me who I am today if I trained differently. Um, yeah, it's interesting to reflect back on now. Like in your case, like what is the main thing that propelled your deadlift to the 705? Would you say?
I think for me, it was when I'm like number one, like working with a better coach, who was like I have only been like my when I first started training, it was a lot of mostly just bodybuilding with like some powerlifting stuff thrown in there, heavy top set, like, and that was why I could go, so heavy all the time. I was doing like one or two sets, that were heavy. But like I think like more volume with that, more structure in terms of learning how to train with RPE and auto regulate. Less pushing myself, and then I think getting my squat up will help a ton too, because my squat was always really lagging. Like my first meet, I deadlifted 650, and I only squatted 424. Um,
Wow.
which is a crazy mismatch. And like I've always been very back dominant, but I think for me it was just learning how to have better technique. Honestly, I think that was number one thing, because I would, especially on the kabuki, which is like I don't like the bar. Like the difference between the Texas bar and the Kabuki is so much different, and like how you have to pull. Like with the Texas bar, I could really get away with my collared Woolen, grip the bar, slam myself into it, be really really explosive, which I still think is good for lifters to do on their deadlift. I know that you've talked about that too in your videos. But with like the Kabuki, and like really learning that, like once that was implemented last year, um, I think just understanding how to pull slack slash push slack out of the bar and really like relax my arms. And then recently, my recent spurt of progress has been just changing around my training week layout, because I used to basically have my volume squats on Monday, then I do my heavy deadlift on Tuesday, and then I would have my squat and deadlift session on Friday. And I was kind of like I was making some progress with that, but then I talked to my coach about it. I was like, hey, how about we move this primary deadlift to Wednesday, then my secondary pulls, which are always conventional, to Friday. And I've had so much higher output there, and my technique is better. And I've had to do that with some of my lifters too, who I have found their deadlift starts to struggle a lot, especially if their squats going up a lot. And there tends to be like a lot of crosstalk between that. So like I know there's a lot of talk about training um, deadlift after squat and whatever. But it's like I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that like whatever gets you strongest, gets you the most training
Yeah.
effect on that lift. Like that's what matters anyways. Like, and plus like be a meet day, like if you're having recovery issues like between like a squat and a deadlift, like even if you went like really really heavy, like I understand that that's a factor, but it's like you should be more in shape, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I've never touched the Kabuki bar either, so that's interesting.
You have to be a lot more patient with it, but like it's like when it rewards you, it rewards you a lot. Like I was doing my warm ups to my 705, and 650 moved slower than 705, in all honesty, because of like I just it bends so much more. And when you time that whip right and you really just know how to do it, it's just like, especially with that, with like the whip gets crazy and you can really, really ride it up to lock out. And the hardest part really just becomes that last part of hip extension to get to the bar. So doing like weighted back extensions, which Pete Rubish is famous for, and RDLs is just super important.
Interesting. Okay.
Do
I'm
like,
still undecided if I want to try one, but
I think it's a lot of fun. Like for like singles, it gets tougher for rep work, but I mean, I've talked to a lot of lifters about it, and like Johnny Coffin was like, and then Jamal Browner, like they took them like a year to get to figure it out. Like, and they still prefer the
oh,
Texas deadlift bar. Um, so I haven't, yeah. Like, what do you think about all the specialty bars, like squat bars and the deadlift bars?
I mean, if I would rather have it to where everybody's just using the same bar for all three lifts. So I like the USAPL IPF model where it's you have a standard 7 foot bar, and that's what you use for squat, that's what you use for bench, and that's what you use for deadlift. So that would be what I'd be in favor of. Which is kind of why I just train on the same bar. I have an Ohio Power bar that I use for all three lifts because I'm trying to get used to that model. Because in you've got to be 3 years drug free to be in the USAPL. Well, my 3 years is up in November. So
Man, that's gotta how your just decision to come off of PEDs entirely without testosterone. Like, was that due to like a lot of trauma around like your usage with steroids? Like, because I personally I can't imagine going through that process, um, and seeing yourself like mentally backslide too, and not just like physically, and your numbers could go down. Like, I don't think people understand like how hard that is, especially when your identity is, I take it probably was really around like I'm Pete Rubish. I lift 900 pounds. I have these big traps. Everybody knows me for like, these crazy cycles and crazy lifts. Like there probably had to be like a lot of like redefining of like your identity in that process.
yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it spot on. It's almost like you become a different person because that's what everybody knows you for. They know you for that distinctive look. They know you for those antics. They know you for the numbers you're putting up, and all that gets eliminated. You lose, my strength dipped for a year straight after I came off. Like it just kept going down for a full year. And really, it took about a year and a half to where things maybe started bouncing back slightly. And still, the numbers are much lower than they were. But at least I can progress at this point. And it's been tough. It's been an interesting journey, and I feel fine now. Like I feel healthy. I feel good. But I kind of had to give up like who I was to almost morph into somebody else. And the amount of attention I get nowadays is a fraction of what it was back then. So, there's a lot of consequences as far as doing that because I lost a lot of um, what I was known for, and a lot of people don't care anymore, or they've kind of the attention's fallen off tremendously. So it's sometimes tough to deal with, but it's all part of the game. And I'm still training, and I'm still trying to climb back, and I want to get as strong as I can without anything drug free. So that's kind of the new phase I'm in, just to be healthier and try to get as strong as I can drug free. And I'm still doing the training and all that, and gonna compete, but it's 100% different. Everything's different now.
So do you think that's like one of the biggest reasons like why you kind of went more into like the YouTube side of things and the coaching side of things, because like more of your efforts are like you're trying to like sort of like redefine yourself in a certain sense of like being like more of like an educator? Is like you've been killing it on YouTube and like social media, like your subscribers have been going up a lot. And so like I know that you said you don't get as much attention now. I think it's probably not for the same things that, like you might have want them to, but I think people that like I personally get a ton of value from like the videos that you put out. Like I watch every single one. And like I don't know, like this is partially me saying like we like people like me and people that are actually like in this and understand it, like we still care about Pete Rubish. And I think you're doing a lot of good stuff right now with the community and spreading awareness and paying it forward. It's like Ed Cohen talked about this in like a table talk episode with Pete. It's like people don't care if you deadlift 900 pounds if you're a dick and you've paid so much forward and back. I think that's why like people are still paying attention to you on that sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that is a big part of it. And um, even if the audience is smaller now, I try to educate, try to help people out, try to talk to people, even more than I did in the past, because sometimes it gets impossible to keep up with all the messages and stuff on top of all the emails I'm doing. But I've been trying to do more of that. But it's kind of crazy because, like, you'll see from where things were 5 years ago or whatever, and you put up an Instagram video back then, it would get 100,000 views. And now I'll put one up and it'll be like 15,000. Or like YouTube, you'll get a couple thousand, but the attention overall is just a fraction of what it used to be. And I've accepted it. It is what it is. You're only, I've said this before, like your 15 minutes of fame only lasts so long. So every top lifter is going to go through that. I think Kaylor Woolham is going through that right now, where he's not as strong as he once was. He's had the injuries. We've talked about this, and he's not the top lifter right now. And I think Jamal's going to go through that eventually, and John and all these guys, because someone else is going to come along and unseat them as far as the top lifter. And it's a process, but I think it's something everybody struggles with, where you have all this attention, you're well known, and then it's kind of stripped away gradually. And it's been something I've had to deal with because, like, obviously my livelihood depends to a degree on coaching. So I try to stay relevant for that reason. And everybody coaches now, whereas before, like when I started, there was like three guys. It was like George Lehman, myself, Chad Wesley Smith, Josh Bryant. That was like all there was, 2013. And now I've been doing this so long, it's like there's way more competition coaching wise. So you're trying to stay somewhat relevant to keep your literal livelihood going in that way. But it's just you have to go about it differently. So it was like a huge sacrifice to come off, because if I hadn't come off, there'd be way more eyeballs on me, and that would help with that. So I don't know. It's just a lot of different thoughts about that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated topic to, I guess. Like, there's a lot of layers there. Like with coaching though, it's like I do full time coaching too, and like it's very difficult to, it's like, oh, everybody is coaching, but one thing that my business mentors have said, and like what I've also told myself is like, well, there's a lot of coaches out there, but most of the coaches suck, and I'm not one of those coaches that suck. And people are going to hire you because of you. Like people hire coaches, not coaching. They want to work with you, and so as long as you're still showing up on social media, doing your thing, and still sharing your own progress and whatnot, being vulnerable with them, and which you've done a great job of, people are going to be probably still interested.
Yeah, then I think that's a great attitude to have, as far as like just be confident in your abilities and what you're doing, and that will speak for itself. So that's really pretty much the mindset you have to have with so much competition and the market being so saturated at this point. You have to go in with that approach.
Do you think that when you go back to your powerlifting like career, do you think that was like you had a lot of like self confidence with like what you could do, and you think that's why like you pushed things so hard because you knew that if you took all these harsh drugs or whatever, like you were kind of like changing like your thought process of like, oh no, like I can do this, and like I'm going to make progress.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I just want to be, as good as possible. And it literally was just a way to accelerate the progress on a much greater scale. So I didn't, growing up, I didn't have any self-confidence. My self-confidence only came from the weights, because that was the only thing I felt like I was good at. Um, so I wouldn't even say that like steroids gave me confidence, but it just made everything come together so much quicker, where it sped up the time frame significantly. And obviously, like, you just can't look like that without steroids. You can't look to that jacked and that big, and it's just not possible. So that also gave me self-confidence where I was building this almost indestructible character. Uh, and like I was a doorman and stuff, and you just want to be as big and intimidating as possible. Um, but steroids didn't necessarily give me that. They just made things up a whole nother level. But lifting gave me that.
And I think that's a really amazing thing that you just said is that seriously didn't give me that confidence. It was lifting weights. And I think that like that's really ultimately like why we do all this stuff. Like lifting is like people that know it, it's like it's not just lifting, like it's expression of a lot of things that we all go through, and some of our own demons, and um it's just like, and like I think that that's why like most of my friends are like they do powerlifting or they do bodybuilding or whatever. It's because like I mean every single elite athlete I've talked to, I've talked to like Sam Calhoun and like several others. It's just like we're all kind of weird. Like we're all kind of have a weird idiosyncrasies. Like we have to have our routine. Like if somebody messes with my routine, I am like, nah, nah, not up in here. It messes with me a lot. Like I have to do certain things. I'm very weird about this, but like we all come together and it all like manifests into greatness and training and bodybuilding or powerlifting, whatever you are doing. And I think that the biggest lessons from powerlifting or whatever is like that this discipline, that follow through, it goes to every of your life. Like Scott Stevenson has said that like or no, not Scott Stevenson, Stan Efferding has said that if bodybuilders or powerlifters apply the same amount of effort they did to their training and their diet, they would be billionaires.
Yeah, no, I've heard him say that, and that's interesting. Where it's we often put so much time and effort into lifting that I do think it's easy to neglect other aspects of our lives, which I've tried to get better at as I've gotten older. I've tried to lean into that idea of balance. But when I was younger, there was no balance. That was just, it was all in on this one thing. Everything I did, everything I thought about was, getting stronger. And now that's less of a thing. You get older, you have more responsibilities, life gets real, and that starts to shift a little bit where it's still a part of you, but it's not everything. So there's that balance. That's the key.
For sure. Um, so I guess I want to ask you, your nutrition. Clearly you are a big foodie, which is, I always said I don't like food. Like I was like, oh, it's like I like I have to eat a lot to like gain weight. Like how high were like your calories to be that jacked? Like you were pretty jacked and lean too at 242.
Yeah, I never I've never really counted macros or calories or anything like that or kept a strict diet. There was only a 12-week period where I was with a coach, Justin Harris, for nutrition. That
Oh,
was
so you're doing
really
all the
freaking
carb
hard.
cycling.
Yeah, 900 carbs a day on the high days was brutal. It was stuffed all day, eating every 2 hours, but it was legit. It was hard. But for most of my life, I've just kind of eaten whatever. Haven't paid much attention to protein intake or anything like that. I've never gone super high protein intake. I'll just eat like ground beef, like a pound of that a day. And then beyond that, it was like a free for all. It was whatever I felt like. So it could be a tub of ice cream, whatever, chips, pie, really anything. Because genetically, I stay lean. So I've never not been able to see my abs very clearly. So I just have been able to eat whatever I want. And I just don't, I've never tracked it, like seriously,
Mhm.
except for that 12-week period.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
kind of
no,
lucky in that regard.
yeah. I mean, I think that like genetics. I mean, also like beyond gear. You can get away with that too. Like your nutrient partitioning is so much better. Going off of that, Pete. So, like, what is like your like if you could eat like one food, it had no calories in it, you could just eat as much of it. You're gonna be as shred as you possibly can. Like, what food would that be?
I'd
That's a really
probably
hard
go with,
question.
I'd probably go with blueberry pie.
Sound like
I
my
mean,
grandpa.
but it's funny though, because even being off PEDs, I'm not quite as lean as I was on steroids, but I'm pretty lean still. But you're 100% like right, like on trend. The how lean I could stay, or it was a different level. Um, like my muscles, everything's a lot more like softer, and it doesn't quite look the same as it did, but I'm still able to stay pretty lean eating even that kind of stuff, which is kind of fun for now. For now.
Yeah, well, the good news is that as long as you keep training, keeping that physical activity up, you shouldn't have too much
Well,
of a
that's true.
down regulation in metabolism. Is what's funny is that everyone's like, oh, my metabolism's slowing down. It's like you sit down all day now and you didn't before. Like that's what it is. um, so you're a big fan. So like, is your favorite restaurant still Cracker Barrel?
Yeah, I'd say like best bang for your buck as far as prices, the consistency of the food. There's so many of them in the South around here.
Hmm.
So I really love Cracker Barrel just because it's easy. It's gonna be the same pretty much no matter where you go. You're gonna get the same service kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've been there before. It's very good. I always like biscuits and gravy and stuff like that. Like any of that like head like I've been to like Louisiana too, and like they just deep fry everything. It's just like it's made with love. Everything is made with love, and that home style cooking, like nothing's better than that. My grandma's from South Carolina, so whenever she makes
Okay.
dinner, it's just like that's what it is.
It's amazing. Yes. Yeah, see, I was like, I can only have so many vices in life. So I had to give up steroids because I'm like, this is really destructive, but I don't want to give up eating what I want to eat. Like I don't want I'm not somebody who eats perfectly clean. I'm like, I want to eat what I want to eat. So that's my vice is like I like to eat things that are not so good for you sometimes. But that's to me, that's a lot less damage than like anabolic steroids for, into my 30s. That's crazy. So that's why
Mhm.
I just replaced it with food.
Yeah, I mean there's nothing wrong with that. Like I have an obsession with ice cream. Like my grandpa Peeler always said that you're not Peeler if you don't love ice cream. And as such, I have done my duty and I've tried every single flavor of Ben and Jerry's. I
That's
say like
awesome.
it's like a tie between like Peanut Butter World and Tonight Dough. Those are two pretty good
Tonight
ones.
dough's legit.
Yeah, like when I was weight cutting, which is a great segue. I would have like a pint of ice cream, like tonight though, and I'm like, oh man, I'm suffering really bad and whatever. But I know that you got some pretty crazy weight cuts. What was your most crazy one, and how did you do that?
The craziest one was trying to get as low as possible. I was trying to get to 220. I didn't know if I was quite gonna make it. So I was like 250 and I cut to 229 in a week. I felt pretty
Wow.
terrible though. But the last like 4 or 5 nights I used the blood pressure medication slash diuretic, lisinopril with hydrochlorothiazide. So that's lisinopril with hydrochlorothiazide. I had as a prescription from many years ago for blood pressure, and it was just sitting in my cabinet. And it's a diuretic in there, so that it clears you out quick. Like
Hmm.
you'll lose a lot of water weight. So I would take that the last couple of nights, which is much milder than Lasix. I never tried Lasix or anything like a lot of the top powerlifters do now. And that was like back then, we didn't really know about IVs afterward either. So nowadays, guys just take Lasix to do these extreme water cuts in the you know, top ranks of powerlifting, and then they do IVs immediately after weigh-in. But this was no IVs, mild diuretic, and sweating it out in the bathtub, and it was pretty intense because I felt like trash. You start feeling really bad. And weight cutting is almost more dangerous than anything because of the strain it puts on the heart, because it jacks your potassium levels way up in your bloodstream while lowering your sodium. So when that sodium potassium ratio gets way out of whack, you're in much more danger of your heart having an issue, basically. So that's what happens when you're doing an extreme weight cut where you're depleting your electrolytes. Sodium levels in the blood go way down, potassium goes way up. That's not good for the heart, and you feel like trash and you cramp up and all that. So it's kind of dangerous. I'm not into weight cutting anymore. I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea unless it's a small amount, like 5 pounds or so, but it's too
Yeah,
dangerous at high levels.
for sure. And like, a lot of times people, and I fall into this trap too. It's like, well, if I cut weight, well, I'm going to have a higher dot score or whatever. It's like the best way to get stronger is to get stronger, not to cut weight.
Well, look at Rondell Hunt. He's freaking amazing. And
Oh my gosh, he's a freak.
he's put about 20, 25 pounds on, and his lifts have gone up significantly. And I don't care. how good someone's dots is, they're not going to beat him because the guy's gotten so much stronger. He's a freak. So that's a good example.
For sure. Yeah. Like weight cutting, like I cut like say 8 pounds, like pretty easy. Didn't feel too bad. I mean, it's never comfortable, but like the hardest part is like getting like my metabolism just goes through things. Like I'm like you know, I can basically eat like what I feel like, and I'm not going to get fat. Stay pretty lean year round. And like that's really not great for like a reconstitution setting because my body is just like, okay, we need a lot of calories on meat day. We need a lot of sodium. Like I need like 12 grams of sodium on meat day, and like to like after if I cut weight to like feel good and to feel strong. And it's a lot more stress than people realize. Like it can affect how you recover going into your meet and your performance. And we get to this weight to lift really heavy weights, and you're going to care a lot more about hitting that lift that you wanted to instead of being 5 pounds lighter.
Exactly. So I don't worry about it anymore.
Cool. Well, I had one last question, in regards to what was your favorite steroid spike cycle?
Favorite cycle?
Mm,
Um, I mean, the thing was, it wasn't like back then there was a cycle. It was like a continuous shuffling in and out of compounds. So there'd be periods where you drop down to just testosterone, and then obviously before a meet, 12 weeks out or so, there you'd add in a bunch of stuff. But really the best results I ever got were just off testosterone and tren. So tren was always the best, hands down, for strength, trenbolone acetate, and really crazy gains on that, to the point where I didn't need to add in anything else. I didn't need to add in an oral steroid or anything like that because trenbolone was so good by itself that when stacked with test, you were going to blow up. That's when I hit all my best numbers. That's all I needed. It was later on when I wasn't running tren anymore because it would screw me up so bad mentally. I discovered Anavar, and I freaking loved Anavar. It was like almost as good of gains as tren without all the side effects. So I still wonder, I'm like, if I had stacked like test, tren, and anavar, how strong could I have been? But never got to answer that question. But anavar is my favorite, hands down, as far as how strong I would get and how good I would feel. But tren gave the best results for sure. It just came with a lot of aggression and a lot of side effects mentally. So, and I tried all sorts of different doses, but even as little as 200 milligrams a week of tren was enough to just blow you up to a freak. Like the strength was stupid. It was unreal. Uh Feeling of invincibility. I still remember it. It was just a different level, man. Like it was awesome. It was like your worst nightmare, but your best friend too. Because you feel like you'd feel invincible in the gym, but then outside of the gym, you would be stressed out of your mind and feel terrible because you were so angry all the time and aggressive and um, just wreaked havoc in my personal life and such. So I just had to stop that at some point, and that was it. That was the stuff. Like that was the strongest. There was nothing like it.
yeah, I know that a lot of the C3 spirals now with trend, like even only employ like trend for like 100 milligrams for like one like month going into like shows, for example. And a lot of like more of it's like DHT derivatives like Primo, Masteron, Anavar on top of like a test base. That's kind of like maybe like a slight amount of like you know NPP, but it's always interesting to me seeing what people need too from an individual standpoint to like really get strong. I think the cool thing about like powerlifting, and at least in like one sense, is like you don't need to take that much usually. Like Ben Pollux talked about that, but you didn't know.
Yeah, I tried different times to take way more than was needed, but just to try it out, and the results were not much better, if any better, than how they would have been at lower doses, which is kind of the irony because there really is a point of diminishing returns with regards to dosages. And I pushed the envelope to see if it would work, and it just doesn't. Like there's like a set amount of each compound that you take that amount, you're at your ceiling. And if you take more, it's not going to help anymore, which is kind of funny.
That's really everything in life, and it's funny because like we always want more. I don't think these things are going great. It's like like, you're never going to build muscle as fast as you want. You're never going to get lean as fast as you want or get strong as fast as you want. That's why, it's so important to just enjoy
Well,
the journey.
a good example would be like, okay, you're not going to get stronger on 30 grams of creatine a day than you would on 10. Like you're not. So you can take 30 grams of creatine, but you're going to get the same strength benefits you would from 10 grams. So I would look at creatine with the upper dosage, as far as the point of diminishing returns being 10 grams. I think 10 maybe a little better than 5 if you're a heavier guy like myself.
For sure.
But I think if I went to 20, if I went to 30, I don't think I'd be any stronger than I would be at 10. So it's the same thing. And that's something everyone can relate to, an example, because everyone's taking creatine. Whether you're natural or you're not, everyone who's lifted at some point is taking creatine. And that's my example. It's like you're not going to get way stronger with way more.
Yeah, that's a really great one. Definitely a lot more relatable. It's definitely above 10 grams is just, negative GI distress, and
Yeah.
bloating. So,
So
uh,
I don't have any GI issues on creatine, but it's something I just will cycle periodically and then I come off it. Same kind of thing. So I feel like I'll derive more benefits when I come off periodically than if I
I,
just.
I, I I personally think the main reason why people do that is like it's actually like a difference. So just like you're just chronically feeling like the same. I know Bob Matthews said that he started taking 10 grams of creatine and just blew him up. Which, hey, it can happen. Like you have some people have a genetic response that like he's one of those freaks. They're like, yeah, like I believe it. And if he hopped on like just 300 tests, he'd probably blow up too.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. I got to talk to him again. He's a character. He cracked me up because
Yeah,
some guys just have it, you know.
for sure. Yeah, and that's why and that's why he's gone on social media, and like you always did a good job of showing your personality too, and especially like, yeah, and that's like why I reach out to you and why a lot of people look up to you and still do. So Pete, thank you so much for donating your time. I know you're a very busy man. You've had a very long day. I'm not going to keep you any longer. People have want to find you anywhere or hire you for coaching. Where should they look for you?
Yeah, you can just search me on YouTube or Instagram, Pete Rubish, Rubish. You'll find me. So,
Awesome, man. Well, I'll make sure I include all the information in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on,
sir.
and thank you to listeners for listening. And I'll talk to you guys in the next episode.